Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel, and we are here to discuss the second night of the WrestleMania proceedings, WrestleMania 36, 2020 WrestleMania, whatever you want to call it. It is out of the way, underway and completed, and we're going to discuss, hopefully, rather quickly, the ups, downs, middle grounds, and all points in between of that event. We're going to do that as quickly and concisely as possible so that you don't have to waste 3.5 hours watching what in reality was a rather lackluster show for a number of reasons. If you're new here, please subscribe, turn on the bell for notifications. We will have multiple videos every day. The idea behind the channel is to bring the merging of old school wrestling in with new school. Everything will be eventually put into lists so you can choose the content you like and ignore the content that you do not, and hopefully get the best of all worlds. So we start the kickoff show with our one match of the evening. Liv Morgan, who I enjoy a lot, defeats Natalya in about 6.5 minutes. Natalya controls the majority of the match. She does a lot of talking, and Morgan picks up the pinfall near the end with a very simple roll-up. They did mesh well together. It's clear to see that they have a friendship and some natural chemistry. It's also clear to see that Natalya is a bit old school. She's still selling and interacting with fans that aren't there. Tom Phillips, otherwise known as Vanilla Announcer number 732, does the majority of the commentary on his own for this particular match. I don't know why this match needed to be there. Maybe they just wanted to try and give a feed in for folks who were going to be dumb enough to spend upwards of $30 on the event versus just going to the WWE Network. I still don't understand the logic behind that. There are promos throughout the pre-show. We don't really need to address those. Hype, 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 and here we go. And then we start in night 2. Stephanie McMahon welcomes us once again to basically the equivalent of the same promo as last night. She, actually, I believe it was the exact same promo. Rob Gronkowski comes in, and he basically says, this is where WrestleMania is at. Hoorah, good for us. Phillips and Saxton are the announcers for the pay-per-view opening match, which I honestly believe was the best match of the weekend as far as WrestleMania went. That is Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. They go just under 20.5 minutes. The long video package does a really good job of cementing both women as legitimate threats to the number one woman in the WWE, perhaps even the number one woman in the world. That's debatable depending on if you like international style, but certainly they are easily both in the conversation for the top woman in the WWE, and I would even say top 5 in the world, regardless of where we go. Charlotte with a series of chops, and she gets right in the face of Ripley, telling her that she's a former multi-time Raw Women's Champion, multi-time SmackDown Women's Champion, and she's going to be a multi-time NXT Women's Champion. And then Rhea comes back at her with a riptide, and there's a rollout, and Rhea Ripley calls her a princess. I know a lot of people are big on Rhea. I have not charted her, and for those that don't know, I was in a nursing facility for a 1.5 years, so getting NXT was difficult. I didn't have access to the network much of the time, and this is before the advent of NXT being on free TV, so it was, well, at least until the end of my stay. So it was difficult for me to catch NXT on a consistent basis. I do plan to go back and watch it. A lot of people are very high on Rhea Ripley. I didn't see it until tonight, to be completely honest. I think this is the best match that I've seen her have to date. I think she held her own with Charlotte Flair, who I consider to be the best woman in WWE right now, right on the heels of Charlotte, of course, is Becky Lynch. But Charlotte, to me, is a more complete package anyway. Ripley goes into control for a bit, and then Charlotte works over the legs for the next several minutes. Charlotte uses her weight to her advantage, kind of jockeying for position. Charlotte, goes back to working the leg several times on a low drop kick and a short arm clothesline for her trouble. Again, they go back brawling to the outside of the ring. Rhea catches Charlotte so that she does not have access to using a top rope maneuver. Nice flying drop kick by Ripley for a near fall, and then there's a chop block by Flair. Referee is right in there. Keeps asking Ripley if she wants to quit. Ripley never says that she wants to quit. Reminded me a lot of the pacing of something like a Austin and Bret Hart from WrestleMania 13 in a lot of ways. Just that slower, more methodical storytelling both women are really good at. And then standing cloverleaf on Charlotte. Charlotte somehow manages to slip out, but that standing cloverleaf looks really, really brutal. I can see where people like the methodical nature of Rhea Ripley quite a bit. Ripley fights out of Charlotte's figure four, the bridging figure four, and then Charlotte goes for moonsault, but Ripley got her knees up, and then we see a spear for a near fall. Eventually, Charlotte gets the figure eight for the win. She is your new multi-time NXT Women's Champion. The interesting thing is, and I can say this, the two matches that stood out technically sound for me in the weekend were Charlotte and Rhea and Becky and Shayna Baszler. It's really interesting to me that the matches that I'm going to walk away remembering are the women's matches. And I think it comes down to a very simple concept, and that is the women still feel they have something to prove. The guys can phone it in WWE in a lot of cases. Now, please don't misunderstand. I'm not insulting the talent. But at some level, if you've hit the glass ceiling and you know you're not going to get any further, what's the point of putting your best effort forward if you feel like a guy that's one out of 150 guys who looks the same, who feels the same, who does the same stuff night after night? The women still feel they have a shot because they're still trying to break the gender stereotype, and thus that means when a woman is put in a primary position, she is given an opportunity to step up, and she knows it. And this shows here with Rhea and Flair, and it showed last night with Becky and Shayna. So the really interesting thing to me is I was kind of amused and bemused that the men's championship for NXT isn't there. Indirectly, does that say that the women of NXT are better than the men? I don't know, but it certainly sends an interesting message if you're the NXT Heavyweight Championship holder on the male side. Then we go to some video packages for Big Show's new television project and some WrestleMania video packages. We come back to Aleister Black and Bobby Lashley with Lana. Lana has a new hair color. I don't know if that's been the past few weeks. I find it really difficult to watch the Raws and SmackDowns with no arena, so I didn't really watch those. Maybe she's had this for a couple of weeks, and maybe it's by me. I like Aleister Black. Not really into the whole tattooed up look, but he's got a really unique and snug style. Smart of them to go into this match right after the women's match. With the pacing well, the match goes about 7 1/4 minutes with Black picking up the win. Match starts at about 3/4 past the hour of 7, and we see a suplex on the outside by Lashley, and then several knees to the head by Black. Lashley then uses a power slam for a near fall, and again, Black blocks the spear with a knee to the face, and then they exchange strikes. It's interesting. I liked Bobby Lashley a lot more when he was in TNA. I like him when he's in MMA, but there's something that doesn't translate to him with the WWE audience, and I think it's because they didn't do enough third-level character development with the guy, and so he's just kind of a big, muscular gentleman who we don't know all that much about and who we don't really care about. And that's even with the Lana storyline craziness of several months ago. He doesn't connect, at least with me, and I don't think he connects with the invisible audience either. So then Black hits a moonsault to the outside. Bobby Lashley forgets that selling is a thing in 2020, and he's back in the ring really quickly. Sets up for Dominator, and then Lana gets involved. Lashley went for another spear. Black caught him with the Black Mass kick for the pinfall. And it was an okay match, but at the same time, it doesn't really do anything to make me want to see either guy again. I don't care if I see I don't care if I see Bobby Lashley ever again, period. He just doesn't do anything for me. No offense to him as a person. Probably a nice guy, just not a guy that I would, if I ran a wrestling company, there's no way I would hire him other than for look. And if I'm going to do that, I'd put him in squash just to make him look like a monster before, I have my monster eater beat him. Anyway, we go back to Kayla Braxton, and she interviews Bayley and Sasha. Bayley is dissatisfied with the multi-woman match. She says that everyone else is against her and trying to drive a wedge between her and Sasha Banks. It's not going to work. And then Banks has never been a SmackDown Women's Champion. Braxton, I assume, was the only attractive female announcer who happens to be in Florida near the Performance Center for the weekend, because she does all of the pre-match and post-match promos, and it is what it is. Then we see a lead-in to the May 10th Money in the Bank. I don't think that event's going to happen. We also see a plug for Total Bellas. Then there is a 24/7 championship deal with Gronkowski and Mojo. It's stupid, but it might get some mainstream press, so why not? Commercials aired, and then a very long, drawn-out, annoying video package for Otis Densmore, otherwise known as Eugene Fat Version, is brought out, and that ultimately is the Otis, Dolph Ziggler, and Randy Rhodes saga. I don't like these packages. I think they take up too much time. I think having this many packages, except for major angles where championships are on the line, is seen as time filler, and I wouldn't do them on my programming. If you're going to do time filler in between every semi-major match, then what is the incentive for people to watch your programming on a weekly basis? People should feel like if they miss a program, that they've really missed something, and they should want to go out of their way to either watch it live or on DVR. Having these packages does not allow people to do that. I know that's a controversial statement, but it's always been the way I felt. That's the majority of wrestling. At most, there should be 2 highlight packages in a 3-hour program, and that should be for 2 main event matches. Anyway, we go into the match with Otis and Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler is a guy I would consider to be the most wasted former world champion ever. I'd love to hear your comments in the comments about that. Is there a guy that held a WWF heavyweight championship who has accomplished less in his career with as much talent as Dolph Ziggler? I'd love to hear your opinions on that. I'd love to see them do something with Dolph where he takes after the Ziggler name, which originally, if you listen to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, that originally comes from paying homage to Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker and noted salesman. That's where the Ziggler name comes from. I'd almost like to see Dolph do like a motivational type of character before he leaves. There's so much meat left on the bone with the guy, and being in a completely throwaway match other than the post-match extravaganza with Mandy and Otis really is not befitting of the guy. He's getting older. He's got less time on his time clock and less bumps on his bump card, and it just seems like a real big waste to have him in this type of match. Otis went right at Ziggler, and Ziggler uses his speed controls Otis for the early parts of the match, tries to send him to the middle turnbuckle, and then there's a lot of really basic offense. Otis no-sold the majority of the offense, and then uses a scoop slam to get his advantage back. We see Otis attempt to do that stupid worm, but Sonya Deville makes her way down. Comes from the apron, is a distraction. Ziggler uses a low blow, and then out of nowhere, Mandy Rose's music hits. So I guess the music sound guy got some chocolates in his stocking left over from Christmas from Mandy Rose and remembered it today in order to play the music in the middle of the match. I don't know. I don't know who's giving the sound cues either, because if everyone's under quarantine, who is foolish enough to be out there doing that? But anyway, logic flaws aside, Mandy eventually low blows Dolph, allowing Otis to get the win. Now, the next nearly 40 minutes of my life, I would trade to get a tattoo with a rusty nail. Edge and Randy Orton in the last man standing match was by far the worst, well, one of the two worst outside of the Buried Alive Boneyard match from yesterday, character matches I've ever, or gimmick matches I've ever seen. Edge walks to the ring, and a cameraman, which later is revealed to be Randy Orton, comes in and nails Edge from behind with an RKO. Edge proceeds to lay on the ground like a dehydrated fish for about 37 seconds, which makes me wonder something. Here is a guy who's been out of the sport for 9 years. We've been told this on television quite a bit. And the first time he's hit with an RKO, he stays down like he's just been in a 30-minute match. Shouldn't we be a little bit worried about a guy who can't take a single maneuver and without being caught completely off guard? So there's problem logic hole number one. That's why we call this the Pro Wrestling Logic channel, because we're here to kind of look at some of the faulty logic in the sport and go, duh? Anyway, so the referee checks in on Edge and all is well. Edge makes his way back to his feet, and then the match can begin because Orton actually attacks him before the match had actually begun. Orton hits a second RKO, and the referee gets all the way up to about 8, and Edge takes to the floor. And then Orton grabs a nearby camera. So here's the thing. A guy that was just down for 37 seconds, not even 3 minutes before, now Orton feels the need to grab a 50-pound camera to knock down the same guy. Again, where's the logic in this? They fight into the fitness center part of the building, and, things kind of get a little hairy with some weaponry being used, punches and kicks being traded. This looks kind of like a street fight, except nobody falls down. Orton then tries to run through production, but we slam Mr. Orton into the garage door. Always amazing to me that when guys get slammed into doors, walls, and other inanimate, non-moving objects, they never come up with any bruises whatsoever. Again, logic hole there. Anyway, brawls back toward the main arena, and then we see Orton launches him into the barricade. Near ending of the match, but Edge is up at 9. Orton drags him down the hallway. Again, going after the wall. The wall is more bruised than either professional athlete. Don't quite understand how that works, but that's the facts of it. They go into a conference room and then use a big conference-level table. Edge then places Orton on the table, and he hits a falling elbow drop, but not before cameraman gets taken out. And then we end up going into some steel steps along the way. Edge climbs a ladder several minutes later in the match, and puts Orton through a table with a diving elbow drop. So here's a guy who couldn't withstand one RKO, but 10 minutes later, he's able to jump off a ladder as though he's completely got all his life back, and this is the Legend of Zelda. Anyway, Orton gets up before Edge, but they kind of stumble around. They fought on top of a pickup truck. Yes, a pickup truck. Now, guy like Edge, who was originally taken out because of the condition of his neck, taking a move on this type of surface would be considered dangerous, right? Right. So Orton then proceeds to hit a draping DDT into the back of the bed of a truck. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, especially with the Japanese athlete whose name I don't recall right now. Maybe Sonata. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there was a guy 2 or 3 years ago who was paralyzed with a draping DDT on the ramp. So why not use that on a guy who's coming back after almost a decade off of a neck injury? Makes a whole hell of a lot of sense, folks. Anyway, Edge climbs onto a big production truck, and then there's a follow-up. Orton goes for the punt, but Edge catches him with a spear, and then we see what's the third or fourth RKO of the match, and Orton grabs some chairs and brought them on top of the truck. I don't quite understand what the advantage is to being on top of the truck. Are we trying to be Mick Foley and the loved one and jump off the truck? Don't really know. But anyway, that's where they proceeded to do the next several minutes of their battling. Edge then uses a head and arm choke that looks, if you know MMA, I guess it looks fine, but at the same time, if this is a real fight, why is he just now pulling out the lethal maneuver if he's known it all along? And if he hasn't known it all along, where did he happen to savant it from this late in the contest? Then we see Edge seem to have won. Edge drops a swear word. Edge becomes emotional and hits a crescendo on Orton and gains the victory. So the babyface in our scenario gets so frustrated with his inability to win after 9 years off and a surgically repaired neck that he finds the need to grab a chair and potentially render his former friend paralyzed. Only in the world of professional wrestling is this a really awesome storyline. Anyway, Mojo Rawley is talking a lot of junk. Rob Gronkowski makes his way out and wins the 24/7 championship. That's good for PR, but very little else. Street Profits against Austin Theory and Angel Garza with Zelina Vega for the Raw Tag Team Championships in just under 6.5 minutes. Theory uses a cutter after we've just seen Orton use about 7 of them. Again, nobody talks about putting matches together anymore, I guess, because the cutter didn't fit here. Anyway, Austin Theory has a great deal and a great upside. Awesome, and I believe him to be main eventing WrestleMania in about 5 years, give or take. He's got almost everything there is to give. So Theory, Garza, and Vega attack the Street Profits after they have lost the match. Titus O'Neil announces that he'll be hosting the rest of the show, and he does the job of letting us know that the show must now continue. There's a 5-way for the SmackDown Women's Championship, where Bayley defeats all of her competitors. Bayley is in there with Sasha Banks, Lacey Evans, Tamina Snuka, and Naomi. She retains the SmackDown Tag Team. SmackDown Women's Championship in just over 19.25 minutes. Naomi does well in her entrance. There's an interesting moment where Michael Cole sounds like he's actually awake, but in reality, I think he just kicked in a little bit of caffeine. Cole was just abysmal in this environment. Luckily, JBL helped to balance him out on commentary. Bailey interacts with Cole when Cole is saying that she almost lost at the same time as Banks did, and the interaction is kind of interesting. Tamina eliminated at approximately 6 minutes and change when Banks gave her a 619. Bailey hits a flying elbow, and Banks hits a frog splash. I mean, there's a lot of good moves here, but I don't like these multi-woman matches because nobody really gets ahead. Evans with a beautiful moonsault, and Naomi, not to be outdone, does a split-legged variation. Naomi really is very aggressive in the match. If there was a crowd there, wonder if they might have turned on her for her level of aggression. Bailey saved Banks from submission at the hands of Naomi, not too terribly long later, and Banks hits a backcracker and applies a crossface, and Naomi is forced to tap out. That's about just over the 10-minute mark of the match. The match really feels very long, even though there's multiple people in it. It is what it is. And so Bailey and Banks team up on Lacey Evans. Evans ducks the running knee, and the friends collide due to miscommunication, and Evans then clocks Banks with a woman's right for elimination over 13 and a half minutes into the contest. Fighting back and forth, and Evans hits a decent moonsault for a almost victory. Evans hits a backcracker, Bailey with a headlock driver for a pinfall, and she retains the SmackDown Women's Championship. SmackDown really, I hate to say this, but of the three WWE brands, the most lame duck show, and I think it's a waste of Bailey for her to be on the show. But somebody has to carry the Women's Championship over there too, I suppose. Now Firefly Funhouse skits. Can't really call this a match, and I'll try and capitalize it to the best of my ability. Bray Wyatt defeated, if we can call it that, John Cena, but as explained, it's not really even a match. Don't know what to make of it. There were some funny spots in it, but I'd rather not see B-level comedy in my wrestling event, if possible. Cena enters, and there is a video cut scene to previous clips from WrestleManias, and then a cut scene to the Funhouse, and Cena is standing in the Funhouse, and the rabbit tells Cena to be careful. Yes, we have John Cena interacting with a puppet that isn't named McMahon. And then Cena is in the dark for a bit, and he's accosted by a Vince McMahon puppet. Please mention Vince and puppet in the same sentence. It makes sense. And then they go through the ruthless aggression era, as Cena just says ruthless aggression about 17 times, harkening back to an earlier time in his career. They intersperse this with a clip of Kurt Angle challenging someone new. The new person seems to be a nearly fired but not fired John Cena in his main roster debut from the early 2000s. And we then see Cena appearing in the gear that would be appropriate for that time period in front of Bray Wyatt. Wyatt then calls Cena a failure in an extended promo, and there are mock punches, cartoonish music, and exaggerated delays all the way around. And then Cena shows up in his Doctor of Thugonomics gear, freestyled a few rhymes, and we hear crickets. But this is after the old Saturday Night's Main Event introduction. You have to see this for it to be believed, but I wouldn't really go out of your way to see it unless you like slapstick comedy that really has no long-term impact. It's not something you're going to remember in 30 seconds, let alone 30 years. Then we go to the Wyatt compound. and we see the original Bray Wyatt in the rocking chair, and there's a clip from half a dozen years ago of Cena and Bray Wyatt, and the crowd begging for Wyatt to win, and Cena eats him alive. Wyatt then wore his old Wyatt family attire, and then Wyatt offers Cena a chair, and Wyatt disappears again. We now see clips of Nitro, yes, Monday Nitro, all these years later, and Wyatt is in a red and black NWO shirt, and he's wearing a leather jacket. He acknowledges Eric Bischoff in clips, and then Vince McMahon calls this such great stuff, but he calls it that in the form of being a puppet. Cena, who is wildly attacked by Wyatt. There are Cena sucks chants played in the background, and Cena is cut back to, and he is beating on a stuffed animal. The Fiend appears behind Cena and uses the mandible claw, and then Cena is unable to continue, so we cut away. We're back to Titus O'Neil, who understandably says, "I don't know what I just saw." I do. I saw the reason that Jim Cornette had an aneurysm on the 5th of April, 2020. Anyway, we then go to our main event of the evening, which goes 4.5 minutes. Yes, 4.5 minutes for the crowning of Drew McIntyre as your new WWE champion. Heyman doesn't do his introduction, and McIntyre comes in, hits a Claymore kick about half a minute into things, but Lesnar kicks out, tries to hit another one, but Heyman warns his champion that it's coming, and then we see Lesnar hit some German suplexes, and then he hits another one and an F5, but the Scottish sociopath is out at about 1 2/4 seconds. Lesnar hits another F5, but McIntyre kicks out just after a 2 count and tries for a third, and he kicks out again. Heyman tells Lesnar to do it again, but there's a Claymore kick waiting for him this time. McIntyre gives him a total of 4 Claymore kicks before finally getting the pinfall victory. He is the new WWE champion. Tom Phillips, announcer du jour, thanks us for watching, and the show ends just before 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast. Overall, this is by far the most lackluster WrestleMania in history, and I defy anyone in comments to come up with, top to bottom, a worse WrestleMania card. I don't necessarily think it's the fault of the talent, but I also don't think it's the fault of the coronavirus. You could have done a strict wrestling card with no gimmicks and had 2.5 hours each night and gotten really good matches in there, given some shine to the NXT men and women, and done something really unique. Instead, what they did was threw a bunch of unhyped matches together, followed by some matches with some real issues that could have used more time to build, and then followed by a couple of legends like The Undertaker and Bill Goldberg, and we threw them away too. We had 3 horribly put together on-site gimmick matches that, if you're a wrestling purist at any level, you're going to be insulted by. If you're not, you're going to be embarrassed to watch them with your family that you're quarantined with because you can't leave your house. I firmly believe that this will set professional wrestling back at least 6 months, if not longer, even when the pandemic is lifted. You cannot insult people's intelligence in this way and then expect them to come up off money that they won't have because the vast majority, 30 to 40% of them, are being laid off of work, and ask them to come back and watch this complete hogwash. No disrespect meant to the men and women who worked hard. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley, I'd go out of my way to see that match. I'd go out of my way to see Drew McIntyre crowned as the champion just because it's a historic moment. Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler from night one, worth going out of your way to see. Owens and Rollins just strictly on the benefit of the match itself, worth going out of your way to see. The rest of it couldn't even suffice a C-level pay-per-view in the last 20 years because it was just there. It was unnecessary, and postponing the event would have done everyone involved, including the fans who lost their travel money. And yes, you can say you're going to make it right, but how big a loss is the company willing to take before it becomes too much, whether we relaunch in May or August or 2021 or 2031? It doesn't matter. Whenever the relaunch happens, companies such as WWE and AEW are going to lose in any event. This has been Scott Golden with your WrestleMania review. I'm going to be doing some Saturday night's main event stuff. I'm going to be doing a lot of other great reviews. If you have a topic or a show you like reviewed, we will be doing that. If you want to be here for Raw, usually after the show, I always try and get things up within 2 hours after the show to be one of the first online for you here on YouTube. I remind you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.